What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, with Home Sound Command, and we are back for a very interesting update video. Man, so many of y'all have been watching my Vishgraz video, and it's really cool to see the community come around a video of a commander I didn't know if too many people were going to be interested in, but it seems like so many of you guys have been interested in Vishgraz. And so a lot of people have been asking me, hey, what have I found in testing? How's my list been going? And so what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about some of the things that I learned in my time, both testing Vishgraz, goldfishing it, playing it in a matter of different environments, and just kind of going over if at all how the deck's changed, what cards have changed, what strategies have changed, and that kind of thing. If you are not familiar with Vishgraz, I'm going to put a link down in the description to the original video. If you have not seen that one, that's going to show you my original deck that I built, my thought process behind the deck, and that kind of thing. This is mainly just going to be an update on Vishgraz, what's changed, and what we're kind of looking at differently. So Vishgraz, 2 white, black, green, 3/3, menace, toxic 1. Whenever it enters a battlefield, create 3 1/1 Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with toxic 1. And this creature can't block. The middle ability, of course, is the thing we're focusing the most on. And then it gets +1/+1 reach poison counter your opponent controls have. Okay, so one of the lessons I learned really quickly with this deck was that it does a good job at making might tokens. It does a great job at poisoning our opponents. But our most consistent way, really, truly, of like winning the game is the mites and proliferating. Now, I kind of expected proliferating to work really well. But I didn't think that we would have as good of a job as we did on getting poison counters on all of our opponents. I think the deck's done a pretty good job at that. You get the mites, you start swinging the mites, and a lot of times they connect pretty quickly. But I think the lesson I learned pretty quickly as well was getting these creatures like Contaminant Grafter or Ixal or Tyrannix Rex. These bigger creatures that have toxic that are going to start hitting our opponents as well. Vishgraz does a good job at that, given that it has menace, and some people are either not going to be able to block it or not be able to block it very effectively. So when you have all these tokens, when we have things like Mondrak and these other ways to double our tokens, getting a ton of mites isn't very hard. But I think connecting with the mites is still the thing that I think make or breaks the game. If we have a game where we just can't connect with the mites, I think we're going to have a hard game overall trying to win. Whereas I think the more often we connect with the mites, the better. You know, I really got to use Necrogen Rot Priest a lot in really interesting ways because it has toxic too, but it very seldom is attacking. It's really there for whenever creature you control with toxic deals coming damage to a player, that player gets an additional poison counter, because then all of our mites turn into really toxic 2 if you think about it, instead of toxic 1. That makes them harder to not block, right? And it takes less of them to connect to make it more worth it. I also really saw this Beastmaster Ascension approach to combat really work well. This and Intangible Virtue allowed us to have these mites hit a little bit harder. Now, the Intangible Virtue, in some sense, right, really doesn't matter because we can't block with them. But I think the thing that Intangible Virtue really makes a difference on is Cryptolith, right? Allowing us to tap them for mana in order to cast more spells. You know, these mites can't block anyway, so why not dump their mana into more important things to push our strategy forward, to get our board more set up. Now, the one thing I realized pretty quickly with this deck was, as much as I wanted to make the Ashnod's Altar, Nim's Death Mantle, you know, combo go wild and all that kind of stuff, that style of play needs a payoff. And I had Bash Remembrance, but I threw in Meathook as well because of this. They each have the ability when a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. Now, Bash Remembrance also says we gain a life as well, but if we want one of those loops to end the game, we need one of these two to kind of help us facilitate that ending the game. We're not in red, so we don't have the impact tremors or the Perforos, so the things that allow us to kind of deal damage when things come in. So if we want to take damage when our things die, I think we need Bastions and Meathook for that. The other great part about this is we were already playing the Phyrexian Altar and the Ashnod's Altar, but these two go really well with these because if we're sacrificing these little tokens for mana, well, now we're dealing 1 damage or 2 damage or 3 damage, as we're sacrificing these tokens as we're netting mana. So I think it was more about realizing, I need an aristocrat payoff if that's the route I want to go. If I can't do the swarm wide method, I need to be able to kind of buy into the aristocrats method and make sure that I could set it up. And I think adding Meathook not only gives us another piece of mass removal, but it also helps us buy in to this aristocrat game plan. The second thing that I thought about that I didn't think about until I was about 2/4 of the way, until I was about 2 or 3 games in with the deck, was all the mites are artifacts. I know that's going to be, for some realization in some players' heads, that's going to put off a light bulb, and for other players, that's not. But I realized really quickly that sometimes with 3-color decks, you run into games where you don't necessarily all get all of your colors quickly, or you get all your colors, but you find this stagnation point where you're trying to find things you can do. Well, I realized really quickly that Mox Opal is really great in this deck because all of those mites are artifacts. We're already going to be playing artifacts anyway. But all we need is to get down Scrawl's Hive or get Vishgraz done once for Mox Opal turn on. And then I was like, wait, Cranial Plating? Cranial Plating seems even better. I actually really wanted to bring in Nettle Cyst as well because Nettle Cyst is a very similar card. It just doesn't attach at instant speed like Cranial Plating does. The thing about this attaching at instant speed, if you think about it, is that is an attacker like Ixal or an attacker like Norn's Choirmaster that's in the air. If you swing this at an opponent who doesn't have a blocker, and let's say we have 15 mites, and you attach that Cranial Plating to one of these, this creature's now going from a 5 or a 4, whatever it is, up to 20, 21, 22. These creatures are going to get massive. Same thing with Vishgraz. Let's say Vishgraz doesn't get blocked because it's Menace. We have all of these mites out. We could actually kill somebody with commander damage just on Cranial Plating alone and being able to do that at instant speed. So I think the thing that I realized with this was, this is a payoff that I'm not buying into. The second was sort of Hearth and Home. I was playing Truth and Justice because of the proliferate, but then I realized, man, I almost feel like Hearth and Home does me a little bit better because if it comes down without Vishgraz, I get to bounce a creature and get a basic land out of the process. But if Vishgraz is down, this is now bouncing Vishgraz, giving me more might tokens, giving me a basic land in the process. And I think it's just pushing us for more forward where we want to go. The spells didn't really want to switch up too much. I brought Teferi's Protection in because I feel like we need more protection against more than just board wipes. I think Teferi's Protection could be the thing that kind of saves us from that big alpha strike, and then we're able to kind of bounce back on our turn to kind of hopefully deal the finishing blow as other people are trying us down. I really found Clever Concealment to be one of the better cards than I expected it to be. Because in a turn where you get farewelled and a turn where somebody's trying to nuke the entire board, you Clever Concealment out of it, and then when you untap with all those might tokens, you're probably going to end up knocking some players out because they're not ready to block that massive brick of creatures that you had. So I really like Clever Concealment. Flawless Maneuver has done very well for me as well. The only downs... I guess the good thing about Teferi's Protection is it's phasing them out, right? Just like Clever Concealment. So the good part there is that you won't lose the tokens. If you were playing just a Eerie Interlude or something like that, that actually is going to exile the tokens and you would lose them. So I think we want just a little bit focus more on the stuff that's going to keep our tokens around rather than lose them. Vraska was probably a choice I should have had in from the beginning. The first time I played the deck, I got to a point where I was like, I have a free tutor, and Vraska would like almost be the perfect thing here. Or man, Vraska would probably just help me in a lot of ways because that 0 proliferate goes a lot farther than you think when you have multiple turns with it. And then the -9 with the Doubling Season or Vorinclex is just gonna kill a player straight out, right? And that's something that you want to have a threat down for. I think that's something that's honestly really relevant to have a threat out that might potentially knock someone out completely out of nowhere that they can't control. So I really like that. Of course, Elish Norn does fantastic once when she's out with Vishgraz because you're getting 6 tokens instead of the 3. Every time you bounce it, you're getting more. I had a game where Elish Norn pretty much pushed me through to win the game just by swarming the board with might tokens. Might Overseer I only saw once, but it did great when I saw it, given that +1/+0 and that first strike. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do. I never got to make tokens out of it. But I think that first strike is really relevant. Rhea of Ord did exactly what I thought the card was going to do. I had a situation where I had a situation where I was going to get Vishgraz in against a player for 6 or 7, and I chose Riavor to give me the tokens instead, and I had a doubler out that turned into 14 1/1 might tokens instead of that 7 damage, and I think that's the kind of choice that, given the right proclivity and the right game and the right protection, could lead to a bigger win than that 7 damage that I would have hit on that opponent. So this is definitely one of those cards that I feel like is going to probably fly under a lot of people's radars because it doesn't really pass the eye test in some ways. But I think in this deck specifically, this is one of those cards that if you have a 6/6 going into a player you don't really care about, it doesn't have toxic, it just kind of is what it is. Why not? Why not just, give it that, or if you have that free attack into someone and give it that, get the tokens out of it instead of the damage, and if you don't need to do the toxic, and kind of live to fight another day with more and more resources. Only creature I'm not sure on in the deck yet is Slaughtersinger. Every time I saw it was a great toxic 2 body, but other than that, it just didn't really do very much. So maybe this is a creature slot that we can find a slot for another something that has toxic. Or maybe this is a slot in a future set where we can bring another creature in or another support piece in to help us out. I have a tough time believing that this deck doesn't see any support in March of the Machines at all. I feel like if the Phyrexians are still around, we're going to have some sort of toxic base or some sort of this base. So what I hope is we see some more of this in that set. The other interesting thing is, because this is primarily a Phyrexian deck, every creature now is a Phyrexian, which means that by Cavernous Souls and things like that are going to always tap for mana for all of them. March of the Machines is rumored to be having a white-black Phyrexian precon, which means some of that stuff could actually come into here. So what I like about that is, in a sense, is that we have some open slots where potentially we could bring some of those cards in here as well, provided they look right or they fit this game plan we're doing. I've really just tried to keep this deck as much of a go wide deck as possible. We still want to blink Vishgraz. We still want to have some fun. The Concordant Crossroad came in so that if I blink Vishgraz and I make enough tokens, I want to be able to end the dang game. I don't want to have to untap, pass the turn and hope I come back around to my turn to win the game. I really hope that Concordant Crossroads is one of those cards where we can E2 or 4, keep it in our hand till we're ready to use it, and then get it down and get it moving. I really think if we made enough counters, if we wait enough tokens in one turn and we could start swinging them, if we make 10 tokens and swing them that turn with Concordant Crossroads, it's going to force our opponents to have to make some bad blocks. I'm really intrigued to see if I can find another Beastmaster Ascension type effect, because I really like it. I think it does so much good. That's the main reason like Mirari's Wake's in here. It's not just because it gives us dome mana, but also just straight pumps our creatures, right? Same thing with Intangible Virtue, just straight pumps those tokens. And the bigger those tokens get, the harder they're going to be to deal with for our opponents. At 1 or 2, you think they're kind of nominal, right? But when those tokens get up to 5 or 6, now your opponents have to actually block them. Now they might die to not only poison, but they might actually die to just damage, right? So I think it's one of those things where we have to be a little bit more considerate about not just trying to toxic out our opponents, but try to do all of it at once. The argument could be made, then why aren't we just playing a straight tokens deck? And I think it's a fair argument to some sense, but I think the difference is that looming threat of the toxic hopefully is going to force our opponents to want to do more to prevent themselves against it. And maybe once we get those tokens big enough, we start forcing our opponents to make some bad blocks to stop them from aggressing back. Because remember, those tokens can't block, right? So we have to. In all reality, we're punished if we don't attack with them. So hopefully we can get to a stage in the game where us attacking with them is going to kind of hurt our opponents because they have to block them. I think that's the one thing I try to get Garruk's Uprising in here for, was giving everything trample and really making sure that we're actually punching through so that our opponents can't just chump with 1/1s and trade, or if we have 2/2s or 3/3s, they can't just chump with the 1/1 and then we don't get anything out of it. Hopefully the Garruk's Uprising can help us, kind of push through for that. The deck drew cards well. I didn't really have any issues with getting pieces. I think it was just a matter of trying to rein the deck in a little bit and understanding what our goals are. And I think I understand it a little bit more now. I think I get a little bit more of the deck now. I think some of the cards like Vraska which I think even that -2 turning our opponents' things into treasures, it's like killer as well. But I'm sure there's cards I'm missing. I have no absolute doubt that there's a card that I'm missing for this deck that would fit so good in the slot that it could go into. But I think for the moment in time, I'm having fun testing this deck. I'm having fun playing the deck. I always try every set to like find a deck that I really want to run through the ringer. I really want to like play the heck out of and see if it becomes a deck for me. You know, to put it. To use examples of decks that are in the main box, Miram was one of those decks. Jetmir was one of those decks that I just had to run through the ringer to see where I was, if my values, you know, my ideas and my values are right, and if not, where I can change them. And both of those decks, with just a little bits of tinkering, got even better and better as those games went on. So let me know, what do you guys think? What do you guys think of the changes? What are you guys changing in your Vishgraz lists? Because a couple of your comments were definitely very helpful to me, made me think about things, made me reconsidering things. I hope maybe some of the changes here, some of the card choices I'm making will help you guys out with that. I'm going to put a link to the new deck list down in the description so you guys can go check it out over my personal Moxfield account, so you can see where the deck's at. If you're watching this in the future, too far in the future, you have the possibility to click that link and the deck look different than it currently looks in front of us on this video, and that's perfectly fine too. I think it would be cool to see what you think even of the current list as it is, and create more conversation around the deck. Really quickly, with the artifacts additions, I went and added Glimmer Void. Glimmer Void's a land that I've been using in a few of my artifact decks. It says at the beginning of your end step, if you control no artifacts, you have to sacrifice it, but it adds a mana of any color. This has worked well in a ton of other artifacts decks that I'm playing, and we're playing a lot of artifacts in this deck, right? Considering that all these mites artifacts, and Skrelvshive's a card that we want more often than not. So Glimmer Void's done really well. And then I think I had Inkmoth Nexus then the first time, but if I didn't, it definitely got added this time. Getting that 1/1 with Infect that can start putting some counters in on people is very good as well. Mirrex did really well for me, making those 1/1s if we have the extra mana. The Seed Core did great. It saved me a couple times where I didn't find a black, or I didn't find a white, or for some reason I didn't find a green. The Seed Core was the thing that allowed me to get Vishgraz down, or get something else down to kind of get the game plan moving. And then the Mycosynth Gardens is just great. There's a lot of things that you don't mind copying. Of course, we can't copy the legendary things, but I copied Glistening Sphere the one time, and it worked out really well. Got me a ton of mana. I copied the sort of Truth and Justice, the other one that was in here before, and it did a lot of good. I'd half considered Conjurer's Closet the one time, but lots of great options in the Mycosynth Gardens, and it actually helped me a couple times on the filtering mana when you play some spells, that have double pips for colors like that, and you don't have one left over. The Gardens has helped me out a ton on that, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Like if you want to see more decks come across your way. Subscribe if you want to join me on my goal of out-brewing your favorite Magic channel. And I will catch you guys next time.